Welcome to Friday 15, Master B2B. Brian Beck here with Andy Hoard, my co-host in this thought leadership series and our weekly LinkedIn Live program and our podcast broadcast around the galaxy. Right, Andy?
That's
and
right.
Where in the world is Andy Hoard today?
Well, the part of the galaxy I'm in today is a little place called New York City. You may have heard of it.
Heard of it. Where's that at?
It's in New York, which also has the same name, which makes it pretty easy to remember where the city's located. But yeah, so came here for a roundtable, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. But yeah, first time I think I've ever done the Friday 15 from the East Coast. And so you're in LA, right?
I am. We're bi-coastal today. Excellent.
I'm in New York. We're like the entertainment bi-coastal.
That's right. That's right. Well, awesome.
Hollywood and Broadway. Got them both.
That's right. Well, we had an exciting week this week, Andy. We were all over the country and at different events and getting people together. In fact, our breaking news today is going to be all about where we were. Here we go. So first off, Andy, you were in New York for our roundtable, Master B2B Executive Roundtable, Midtown Manhattan. It was a really looked like an awesome event. Tell us how it went.
Yeah, no, we had actually a new cadre of companies. We had pharma companies like Merck was there. We had Panasonic, Duracell, some fashion companies, companies that make home furnishings. We had lighting companies, who it turns out, do a lot more B2B than you might think. And in fact, a few came and said, "Hey, I wasn't quite sure if this was right for me," but when they came, they were like, wow, yes, we didn't realize we do 20, 25, 30% of our business in B2B. Yeah. And we don't realize how different it really is until we're there. And then we had a fantastic conversation about testing your website. As you know, the theme of our roundtable series this year has been about customer experience.
Right.
And we spent, 30 minutes talking about how to test, because one of the gentlemen that was there actually is a former data scientist at Amazon.
Right.
And so, and Optimizely was there, and they were talking about how they do testing and what works and what doesn't work. So I just stepped back and let them talk. And for a good 30 minutes, they were peppering questions at one another. And it was exactly why we do these roundtables. Exactly. And of course, the venue, didn't miss either. You can see that middle picture there as we had our cocktail reception on a balcony overlooking Midtown, and you could see St. Patrick's Cathedral, and it was just an amazing view. So great place, great people, great topics. Everything was great.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Andy. And we've got a bunch of these coming up. We'll share the schedule later in the episode today. But So LA is next week, and we'll have some great views and a great group getting together then. So. Yeah, Andy, while you were in New York, in the heart of Manhattan, I was up in Seattle at Amazon Accelerate, which is it was incredible, the number of people that were at this thing, Andy. There were 5,000 people. I think there were probably another 10,000 online watching virtually. This is Amazon's seller conference, where they get all the folks who are doing what's called Seller Central together and talk about new features and things. I spent a lot of time with Amazon Business. I spent some time talking with Shelly Solomon, who's the head of Amazon Business now. Met a lot of some new folks in Amazon Business, and also learned about some of the things they're doing. So one of the big announcements for the Amazon Business world was that Amazon is now allowing advertising specifically to reach business customers, which they had never allowed before. So they're advancing their paid advertising components to allow for things like that. So they continue to chop away at all the things that businesses need to meet those business buyers. It just continues to raise the bar for the rest of the industry. It's incredible. So it was an exciting event, and lots to report. I'm going to do a quick a post out on probably on LinkedIn with a recap of some of the other things. The other big thing they introduced, Andy, which was really interesting or talked a lot about, is 1 hour delivery. 1 hour delivery using drones. So they had their head of delivery up there talking about continuing to advance. They did 2 day and then 1 day, and now it's 1 hour. So by the end of the year, they're going to have that capability in key markets. That's incredible. Think about that, right? think about what distribution is traditionally differentiated on: instant delivery or quick delivery, right? Whew, they
I'll
just
tell you, the
continue.
time frame between science fiction and reality is shrinking.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they brought this up, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, if I'm recalling it correctly. I think there was even like a 60 Minutes discussion about it. They had Jeff Bezos on there, and they said, "You're going to use drones," and they're like, "What is this? Are we going to be eating meat pellets and living on the moon too? I mean, what are you talking about here?" And it sounded so futuristic, and here it is.
Yeah, it's incredible. They continue to push the bar, and it's their whole culture is all about testing, and fascinating because they also do things that are counter to their own core business. Like they're doing a lot to enable other people to sell on their websites. A lot of talk about logistics and operations and extending Amazon's shipping capabilities. They are legitimately competing with FedEx and UPS, as we've talked about, but they're saying, hey, listen, they're buying market share now. They're out there offering discounts on shipping rate. I mean, they're enabling other off Amazon transactions to occur, which is counterintuitive in some ways. You think about it, but Harrington got up there, the CEO of retail, and said, hey, we believe in this. This is we're sort of counter ourselves in a lot of ways. And they introduce these new programs. They do things that are outside the box, which most traditional businesses don't do.
Hey,
And that's
remember the Amazon Marketplace was exactly
yes,
that. They're
yep,
like, why are we gonna remember back in the day, which seems like it was
yeah,
a glacial time frame ago, but Amazon used to sell stuff themselves,
that's
and
right.
they didn't have this third-party marketplace. And then they said, well, if we can't beat them, join them, because
Yep,
people were going to third parties and buying these things, and they're using Amazon to web room
right.
their stuff as opposed to showroom. And so Amazon's like, well, we're never going to win that game. So let's just get 15% of whatever they're selling. Let's just bring them into the fold. And of course, the Amazon people responsible for selling Amazon stuff said, wait a minute, why are you inviting the competition in?
That's exactly
And they
right.
said, because it's actually better for customers. This is where your mindset really matters. In fact, the other day in our discussion, one of the things that the former Amazon gentleman said is, he said, when they're doing testing, some of what optimized for his group actually was not optimized for another group. And so they would have these knockdown, drag out fights internally where they'd say, if we change the page to help us here, it would actually hurt
Yeah,
us there. And so somebody had to make a decision. So not only do they compete with other people outside of Amazon, they compete with people inside of
true.
Amazon,
That's right.
because
That's right.
ultimately what matters is what customers want, and the data always wins.
Yeah, and that's what they do really well. Okay, so let's get into our topic today: making analytics actionable in B2B e-commerce. So this is a question, Andy. I mean, as a VP of e-commerce for 15, 16 years, this is really key, right? This is a key part of being successful in your function as a leader. So again, here, Andy, we went to the authority on all things now, Chat GPT, right?
Yeah, we pay homage to our overlords, hoping that they'll treat us fairly and kindly in the future.
That's right. That's right. We're already sitting in the matrix. So we asked ChatGPT for a definition of e-commerce analytics, and I won't read the whole thing here, but essentially it said it refers to the process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data, and also understanding various metrics and KPIs that reflect customer behavior, sales performance, effectiveness of marketing, and overall business health for e-commerce. And so, and in my history, Andy, and the history of many of the folks that listen into our podcasts and our sessions here, how we've traditionally looked at e-com or analytics and e-commerce is really in a silo, right? This is for those of you who can see the screen here. I'm showing an example of a Google Analytics page that shows things like visits and new versus repeat visitors, number of page views, conversion rate, revenue, average order value, what we call bounce rate, which is the number of people that hit the site and leave it immediately. This is how we traditionally looked at it. The problem, in some ways, this is good. It gives us a lot of good actionable data because, hey, we could say if people are bouncing on the website, where are they bouncing? Why are they leaving immediately? And go fix that page. But the problem is it doesn't tell the full story, right? So I wanted to share some data here I found from BCG research that shows that on average, 2/3 of purchases were influenced by digital, but they happened these are offline transactions, being influenced by online transactions. And Andy, we found this in our own research too. So, and this is B2B specific. The data I'm showing here has to do with industrial machinery, industrial supplies, packaging. These are B2B categories that are demonstrating, that digital is really a significant influence. So your data, the KPIs that we look at as a e-commerce operator, don't reflect this. They're just reflecting what's happening on the website, which is important, but it's not the full story. So this can get even more complex when we think about different scenarios. Andy, you found some data here from Harvard Business Review. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, we could probably do a couple hours on this alone, but there are basically what they describe as 3 states in which analytics operate. One is a kind of a descriptive model, another one's a predictive model, and the last one is a prescriptive model. The difference is, I think about like the weather. So let's say you want to describe what happened yesterday. Oh, it rained yesterday. The model said it rained yesterday. Well, you need that in order to inform the future model. So you have to understand the past. So that's kind of a description of what happened, but there's nothing predictive or prescriptive about it.
Right.
Then there's kind of the predictive one, which is, in the next 3 days, we're expecting rain, which is a model that will tell you that there's rain coming, but it's not the ultimate sort of nirvana around analytics, which is help me understand when it's going to rain and where it's going to rain and how much it's going to rain. And that's what everybody's aiming for, which is the prescriptive decision making that analytics can deliver. And I think they did a nice job here of talking about all 3 of them, because when we talk about analytics, we don't always talk about the differences here. They also stress that you need to have a data culture. This sounds so much like what we said many thousands of times about having a digital mindset or a digital culture. You need a data culture that appreciates data and sees it as an opportunity for differentiation and not something to be managed or costed out. And then I think the other thing is it's important to know that the analytics have to be aligned with your business goals, which is what we really talk about on the next slide. Which is that this is fascinating, actually. This is very complex, but I'm going to try and simplify or oversimplify so we can get it done here. Think of a 2x2 matrix where you have aligned companies and misaligned companies, and then low digital maturity companies and high digital maturity companies. What they wanted to know was, what does analytics fit into each of those 4 categories? I'll take the 2 extremes. The aligned companies, meaning internally aligned, that's the C-suite and the rank and file agree on what we're doing here as a business, and the analytics is measuring the same thing. That are digitally mature. Those people, when they get the analytics right, their research showed that the analytics has a multiplier effect on the business.
Interesting.
In contrast, the companies are the sort of misaligned, and the way they did it is they interviewed the CEO and somebody who's in charge of analytics, and they asked them both the same set of questions. And they saw if there was a difference in the answer.
Oh, that's interesting.
If there was, they called that misaligned. So misaligned companies that are digitally immature, not surprisingly, the analytics didn't have much of an effect because they're misaligned and the digital maturity is low. So they're just at 2% and they don't quite know what they're doing. They're still feeling around in the dark. But where they said the analytics really underperform is for misaligned companies that are digitally mature. And that sounds almost like an oxymoron, but if you think about a company where the C-suite's thinking one thing and the analytics team is thinking something else, but they're selling 50-60% of their stuff online, they said where you get the analytics wrong in that scenario, it actually has a negative effect. As you can see on the screen here, they showed that what was the effect? That was the one condition: misaligned, digitally immature company where the growth KPIs underperform, the financial KPIs underperform, and the customer KPIs all underperform.
That's fascinating. Yeah, think about it. Like, I guess maybe it's a little bit of, hey, we're digitally mature, we've arrived. Maybe they don't need to think about their, or put effort into alignment because they feel like they're there. I don't know. It does. I mean, data. What's interesting, Andy, in all this is that data can. If you don't look at it objectively, it can almost tell whatever story you want it to tell, or you can use data as as an operator in a silo to kind of tell your story and ignore other data. You know what I mean? So this does, I think, come down a lot to culture. And getting back to our earlier discussion, Amazon, Harrington, again, who's the CEO, Doug Harrington of their retail business, was talking about data and how they're using AI to do some of the predictive things you were talking about. What was interesting about Amazon's culture is they're very much about the data and analytics and allowing it to tell a story, and they demand that the data be viewed objectively. And so I think that's a key piece of this. So, and then Mark, we got some comments when we talked about this on LinkedIn. Mark Vasquez, who's the global director of eCommerce at Ideal Clamp Products, weighed in on this. And I think, he highlighted a really interesting side of this, Andy. He said, I think the problem can come from a proliferation of data and changing KPIs. So he's saying too much data. We don't always track the right things, but we may not know it until we've been tracking it for too long, and it stays on the dashboard and it becomes a mile long. So this is part of the problem. There can be too much data, right? And well, as an operator, you don't know what to focus on.
Yeah, there was an interesting study that Gartner did. I think it was in 2018, where they asked digital leaders and CDOs sort of rank the top 3 activities that you're measuring for data and analytics success. And they were all internal in 2018. Right. 4 years later, they asked the same people the same set of questions, and all of the analytics were focused on external things, which is, by the way, better, I think, in generally. But look at that shift in 4 years from highly focused internally to highly focused externally. So to Mark's point, I think you can find that analytics, because they're reflecting the business strategy, can be a moving target.
Yes.
And for companies that are not honest, intellectually honest about what their business is doing from a digital perspective, to your point earlier, it's not just about selling online, it's about cross-channel influence as well. If they're not intellectually honest and not measuring that stuff, then surprise, surprise, the analytics are going to be off because the business doesn't reflect the analytics don't reflect the business.
That's right. Yep. So the question we started with this all with is, how do we make analytics actionable? How do we distill it down to the point where, it can be, what are the most important metrics to be measuring, and how, again, on the alignment side too, not just in a silo. So this is some data that I found, Andy. I looked at a number of different sources, all AI, Google AI, ChatGPT, all of them. And I created a list here for discussion. Do we collect, some of the points that were made, I saw we're, collecting data in one place, having a holistic view, right? Omni-channel view. So, you've got, that's one of the challenges. We talk a lot about data at our roundtables, with the fact that if we've got it in a lot of different places, it's hard to analyze it. It's hard to pull it together into a cohesive picture. Comparing data over time is a best practice. So, again, it sounds motherhood and apple pie, but how are we doing? If we standardize the data and how we're collecting it, how are we performing? Know your KPIs and looking across channels. So, we think about, my favorite metric is share of wallet, right? How good are we doing from a transactional standpoint across all channels in meeting customers' needs? Setting and measuring.
One quick point. One quick point. The collecting data in one place or having it all in one place is an enormous challenge for B2B companies. Comparing data over time, once you've got it there, that's oftentimes simply a report. But that first one, these are not all made the same. That first one I found is by far the most difficult one. Number 2, I find, is actually like the Harvard Business Review story talked about, aligning the business performance and the key goals with the KPIs, because oftentimes they're not aligned.
Right.
And people are narrowly measuring one thing, or the business challenges change every year. Like, it's always about profit, right? But one year it could be about growth. The next year it could be about cost reduction. And all of a sudden you're getting lurching back and forth all over the place around what you're measuring. So analytics is kind of the tail that gets wagged by the dog.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, to your point, I mean, a couple other things of note here. I mean, one is measuring benchmarks and also goals. So setting up and understanding where you're going with your metrics and then highlighting those. And then the last, kind of thing I wanted to mention here was around testing, right? And you talked about this at the roundtable this week, figuring out which metrics. And there was a really interesting figure that was highlighted during your roundtable, right, Andy? It's something like it was only 12% of tests actually result in something actionable. The other 88% tell you nothing. Is that true?
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think people's mouths were agape when they heard this. And by the way, I should have mentioned this, total coincidence, but we asked the people in the roundtable confidentially, we had them fill out a form. What are your top priorities for 2025? The number one answer was analytics.
Wow.
Ahead of customer experience. So when we decided to do this topic, I'm like, Brian, you're going to be shocked to hear that.
Yeah,
that's exactly what we heard in New York. Now, not everybody feels that way necessarily, but I think it was like 78%, which was overwhelmingly in New York, the number one answer.
That's amazing. So we did ask our LinkedIn community also, do they feel like they have enough information on their analytics dashboard, not enough, or just the right amount to make actionable decisions? That's the key. That's the key word here, actionable decisions. 56%, Andy, said not enough information. So unlike Mark, who highlighted the issue with regard to too much information, not knowing what to do with it, only 22% said that. 56% said they didn't have enough info to act on, and only 20% or 22% said they had the right amount of information. So we have work to do here, folks, in making this information actionable. And it gets all the way back to the foundation of getting the right data into one place so you can build it. So those are subjects of our upcoming roundtables. We're going to be talking about data in quite a few of these. We have roundtables coming up next week in Los Angeles. We'll be in Atlanta, Dallas, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Minneapolis, and Denver. Go to our website, masterb2b.com, and look up future events, and you'll see all these. And as a practitioner, you can attend for free. These are 20 to 25 people gathering in fabulous locations in these cities. And we have robust conversations followed by dinner. Yum. And it's always a good dinner, right, Andy? So we also want to encourage you to join our forum, which can be accessed through our website, masterb2b.com forum. If you're a practitioner, you can apply to join us. There's no cost in this. All kinds of conversations happening all the time. This is a vendor-free zone. It is only practitioners, and you can ask questions of your peers and network online. It's like a mini LinkedIn. And finally, we want to remind folks that we have our podcast version of all of our Master B2B episodes available via your favorite podcast service, Spotify, Apple, Google, also on our website. So encourage you to check us out so you can listen to Andy and I banter about this crazy stuff while you're working out or doing laundry or driving your car. So,
or as I heard this week, somebody said they listen to this when they mow the lawn, and this person's wife said, well, why don't you pay somebody to mow the lawn? I mean, you're getting up there in age. He goes, well, because if I had somebody mowing the lawn, when would I listen to the podcast?
Well, there you go. I like it. For motivation, see, for the to-do listers everywhere, we're a good reason to do your tasks. Anyhow, Andy, any final words before we drop our Friday? Oh gosh, over 20.
Yeah, be back in Chicago next week. Look forward to another topic and another great conversation.
All right. See you on the next episode of Friday 15, everyone. Thanks for joining today.